Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everyone. Today on Big Blend Radio's Quality of Life show, we are chatting with award-winning writer and author Julie Ryan McGue. Her memoir is out tomorrow, February 4th, 2025, and it is called Twice the Family, a memoir of love, loss, and sisterhood. And this is kind of like a follow-up to her first memoir, and that came out back in 2021, award-winning, like I was saying. She's award-winning. It was called Twice a Daughter. So I believe there's another one in the works, and she's also got another book out, so which is a collection of essays. So welcome. How are you, Julie?
Great to be back. I'm really excited about this new book coming out. Hopefully
Yeah.
all those writers and listeners that were wanting a little bit more of the backstory from Twice the
Mhm.
Daughter will be really happy with this book.
Yeah, so this is interesting because we're going to talk about adoption, family, and then just it's kind of like a discovery to find out who you are has pretty much been a part of your journey. So writing, has that always been part of your life, or really following the path to, find out more about who you were? Which came first?
Finding my birth relatives was the first thing that happened, and that was back in 2010, 2011. I had a
Hmm.
health scare, was sent for a breast biopsy, and my husband said, you got to figure this out. Try to get some of your medical history. So first I talked to my twin sister, and she and I said, all right, let's go for it. And we had to talk to our adoptive parents first and make sure that they knew what we were doing. With all,
Mm.
transparency, they had our adoption papers, so we needed that information even to get started. And that search for birth relatives and medical history took 5 years, which is the
Wow.
subject of Twice a Daughter. It starts with the very scene with my husband saying, you got to get at this, to my meeting my birth mother, never meeting my birth father, but finding out I had a brother and a sister I didn't even know I had. So kind of a happy ending. And as a result, everybody I told that story to said, you're writing this down, right? You're writing a book. And I thought, well, I guess I could. I mean, I dabbled in journaling and writing in college, but that wasn't my career path. I was teaching computers to
Mm.
all different ages. So I went back to night classes and I learned how to write memoir. And the book took me almost 10 years to get it in the shape
Wow.
that it came out. And once I started telling my story, as I said in the introduction, people were like, well, what happened before that? What was it like to grow up as a twin and an adoptee in this big, crazy Irish Catholic family? Um, so I went back and tried to reconstruct a timeline of the major events that happened in from birth through meeting my husband and having our family.
Wow. And also being a twin, especially an identical twin, there's already a fight there for your own identity, right? Uh,
Yeah.
we have identical twins all throughout our family. And it's like when my grandmother, decided everyone's wearing the same thing. Yeah, that and yet that happened to her. So why did she do it to them too? you know?
I don't know. We were dressed alike when we were kids, and then we basically said we'll wear the same outfit, but it's got to be a different color.
Yeah.
And then as we grew, we really did try to individuate. She played a different sport than I did in high school. Interestingly enough, we went to the same college. Didn't quite want to separate it from each other at that point. And
Sure.
we pledged different sororities, which is part of the book, part of what I talk about. And we went to Indiana University, which Big Ten school, a long way from home and a big scene. Things that we had not been exposed to in this very restricted Catholic kind of upbringing. We came
Uh-oh,
from a Catholic house.
shenanigans.
Oh yeah, there were a lot of shenanigans. My sister ended up with a roommate that was very promiscuous.
Mm,
And so that was eye-opening, as well as some other things that we had to figure out. Well, how do we think about this?
Mm.
How do we think about abortion, and how do we think
Wow.
about all of this going on in the dorm scene? And we figured it out. And I think one of the themes of the book is the life that my parents set up for themselves wasn't exactly what my sister and I wanted for ourselves.
Mm.
As the oldest of six, there was a
Yeah.
lot of responsibility. I really thought, hey, if I have a family, it's going to be one or two kids, because this is ridiculous. There's so much chaos. There's too much going on. There's too much responsibility. While I enjoyed my childhood, we basically went out the door in the morning to the park across the street and didn't come home till the street lights came on. And
Mm.
while I loved that independence, there wasn't a lot of accountability, in the sense that, if we did group activities, everybody went to swim lessons. There was not, you get to do dance lessons and he gets to do swim lessons and he's going to
Mm.
pitching coach. So I wanted something different for my family when I
Mm.
started my family, which is really what happened.
Yeah, I think, well, we all go through this, but being, like I was saying, adopted, and then also in a family where you've got biological kids for your parents, and then the adopted children, then it's like, okay, there's a lot of emotions and complexities that go on with that. And then even as you're saying, growing up, and your individual feelings may not go with what the biological, family, but I think families try,
They
you
do.
know,
And my
and
parents
it's,
did do a good
yeah.
job with teaching us family values. We were always supposed to watch out for one another. There was ultimate honesty. Back then in the 50s and 60s, there was corporal punishment, though. And that is something that I deal with in the book. I talk about what it felt like to be on the receiving end of being physically slapped or what have you. It
Mhm.
was perfectly acceptable at the time. So I'm letting my mom off the hook on that. But as an adoptee, there's this vulnerability and this attachment issue you have anyway. And her treatment of us, whether it was warranted or not, served the purpose of pushing me away from her. I did
Mm.
not develop a strong attachment to her for quite some time because I was afraid of her and I was afraid
Mm.
of screwing up. And other adoptees talk about the same sensation. We
Wow.
have this innate desire to please and be
Yeah, that makes
perfect
sense.
so that, while it's rational or not, there is this fear of, well, maybe this set of parents will give us back too. The adoption was final, but still, you've been given away once. What's the possibility that you would be given away again if you didn't follow all the rules and
Mm.
live by the household set of rules?
Did I wondered, is there like groups where you can go to where other adoptees are there too, going through things, so that it's that feeling isn't like you're given up? You know what I mean? That that kind of, that's such a hard thing to, really understand, especially as a child. And then when you start getting all those emotions as a teenager, start to, all that weird stuff comes out. It really does. It's not, you can't ignore it, right? So
Correct.
are there sources, I know it's changed over the years, but are there sources for the youth to kind of tap into, to understand it's got nothing to do with them, but everything to do with their life?
There is today, and I credit the online community. I got involved when I started to look for my birth relatives back in 2010, 2011. I got involved in a post-adoption support group through Catholic Charities, which was my adoption agency. And I'm still in contact with those, my people, as I call them. It's a meeting made up of a moderator, adoptive
Mm.
parents, adoptees, and also birth mothers.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that was actually very advantageous in learning to understand why my birth mother initially didn't want to meet my sister and I.
Mm.
Also helpful in understanding my adoptive mom's reaction to us searching so later in life. She was not happy about it, and I
Mm.
made me feel very disloyal by doing so, even though there was medical reasons to do so. So there are different support groups now. As a kid, there were not. I didn't know any other adoptees besides my twin and my brother 2 years younger. We didn't go to counseling in any sense of the
Mhm.
word, any family counseling. It wasn't made available. Maybe it wasn't even available. I don't know. But it's certainly available now. There's all sorts of groups on Facebook for adoptive parents of children, birth parents. There's joint groups for all of us. There's so much access to support. And being in that community is very validating. You know, we can say, I'm a recovering people pleaser because I'm an adoptee, and everybody in the room will understand what that means. And I think it's
Wow.
so helpful for adoptive parents to kind of get inside what their child might be thinking and feeling, however rational it is. You know, it's imagined, and so it's something that it needs to be discussed.
And even, finding your birth parents and then seeing if they even want to see you. That's another part to
Oh
go through.
yeah,
And then
and that's
finding
what
finding other kids and you've got siblings that you didn't know. That's a whole other world. Does everybody want to see each other or not?
and probably not right away, which is the case for my sister and I. Our birth mom absolutely rejected contact.
Wow.
Took her a while to come around with the help of a intermediary. She did come around. And my birth father I never did meet him. After 4 years, he passed away suddenly, and we had not ever met.
Mm.
But his children, my half brother and sister, I'm in contact with all the time. They've turned out to be great friends. Um, and that, I guess, is not uncommon because cousins and siblings, they don't carry the same baggage that the parents carry. You know, for some reason, it was a failed relationship, which they may or may not want to share why that was the case. And certainly that was my birth father's case. He told my brother, this is just too complicated and it's not something I want to get involved in. And I respect that he was honest about his
Mhm.
feelings about that.
Hmm. Wow. But it is interesting, going on the medical record side, that kind of there's a protection in going in and asking those questions, right? By having that, I need it for this piece of paper. And then it's like, at least just give me the piece of paper stuff, right? And
Well, and they can't. If you're a result of a closed adoption, which my sister and I were, unless the state, because states have individual adoption statutes. Illinois, for example, which is where we were adopted, the laws changed right around the time that I was searching, which meant I could access my original birth record. In New York has changed their state adoption laws, and several other states have, about 15, I think, to date.
Mm,
Um, which is astounding that not every state
yeah.
is enacted these new laws. And that allows you to see what names are listed on your birth record, which may or may not be their real names. Because back then,
Yes.
50s and 60s, a woman could use an alias on a birth record, which meant it's almost impossible to find them unless you access your adoption agency's records. So that's what I
Wow.
did. I had an intermediary that got permission from a judge to open my sealed records. She accessed my birth mom's real name and was able to find her. So it's quite a
Oh, wow.
complicated process, which I go into in Twice a Daughter and talk about all the steps that we took to try to find everybody. And it feels on one level like it happened yesterday, but it also feels like it happened a long time ago.
Mm.
um, Because, you know, my birth
You're
father,
living it.
yeah, I'm living it. And
Well,
that's
writing it as a memoir, you're kind of revisiting it and living it, and you're kind of in a, there, then, and now kind of thing, you know?
exactly. And having written that story first, I think was very helpful because you establish a timeline in your life and go back and fill in the major points that you really think readers should know about,
Mm.
which was half the battle for writing this second memoir, Twice the Family. I had to pick the events that were significant to me with the themes of adoption and the themes of family building, while also giving the reader an eye of what was happening back then in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. How is that different from today? For example, the corporal punishment piece that we were talking about,
Yeah.
that was very prevalent.
My knuckles still hurt.
From the nuns?
Yes. Yes. How did you know? I did this one stint.
I remember that ruler.
Yep. Under cold water. They would
Oh,
put our, yeah. Uh-uh. No. And
yeah.
it wasn't a whole big part of my life, but I had this one moment of having to go to convent, like I called it the nunnery. And they were very sweet, but I talked too much in class apparently, and then your hand went under the faucet and out
Mm.
came the ruler and whack on your knuckles. And
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
swear my knuckles, now that I'm, not that age anymore, as I'm aging, I'm going, nuns, you did this. I didn't do that to my knuckles. You did it.
And here they were squelching what your career turned out to be. You needed to be a talker.
Yes, apparently.
Apparently.
Apparently. But that to me it's just so it's a very interesting thing, because you're supposed to be coming from love, right? With yeah. And I think they did, but it was just, this was the passed down, this is how you do things,
Yeah,
you
this is
know.
how parent. And also back then, which is something I talk about in the book, I had a younger sister that was special needs, one of my
Mm-hmm.
parents' biological kids, the youngest one, and she was special needs, and we knew how to manage her. We knew we couldn't rearrange the furniture. She had some vision issues. It turns out she also had a weak heart.
Oh,
And when she passed away suddenly by a virus, there was no support system, in the sense that we weren't taken to family counseling. My mom had some depression issues as a result of
sure.
sudden death. We felt a lot of emotional abandonment from her, because she was just basically trying to take care of herself. And those mental health issues were not addressed. It took a long time for the family to heal from this grief. Whereas nowadays, I mean, we can get support online. We can do a Zoom call with a counselor. Back then, you were really just
You
supposed
don't talk about it.
exactly.
It was like the offspring of the silent generation,
Hmm.
and you just don't talk about it, especially women,
And
maybe
just
they'll get together, but families break up over things like this,
exactly.
completely break up
Yeah,
over
my
things like
my
this.
parents did stay together. They were married 64 years before my dad passed. And I think the things that we learned as a family dealing with her health issues, as well as her death, were things that I have drawn upon along through my life.
Mm,
Those strong family values of, we're going to get through this together. We're going to pray at
nice.
every meal.
Mhm.
We love each other even though we're suffering, and we did get through it as a family. And so I hope that it offers hope to families that struggle with
Mm.
whatever kind of issues within the family.
You have to have some form of glue,
Hmm.
that, it's like when you're talking about, getting together at the dinner table, things like that. I think every family has to have some regroup point to keep them moving forward. Could be a religious belief. It could be, we're always going to have dinner on Sunday. All that kind of thing is important to help, like, a normalcy come back. It's like a step forward. Like, you just, because this happened and it's terrible, doesn't mean you don't reunite in some
Right.
form.
Exactly. And it
Doesn't
was,
always happen, but
yeah, it was really fun to work on the book with my mom and my sister.
that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, we would have dinners out and collaborate over the facts, basically.
Mm.
Is it true? Is this what this is what I remember? Is this what you
Oh
remember?
boy, that's fun.
Yeah, it was very Um, and my mom, while she's 92 now, and her memory of things back then are terrific. I mean, she
Oh, that's
really
fantastic.
could recall a lot of things that my sister and I, because of our age, maybe didn't have all of it right. So
Mm.
I feel like it's a very true reckoning of the family events. And it's become, everybody in my family's read it before its publication. I feel like it's a bit of family history and some
Sure.
foundation to my mom for all of the things that she went through trying to build a family and keep her family together. I think it's a lot harder on women from that era than we realize what they went through.
Mm-hmm.
As you said before, they were quiet about it. You just
Mm-hmm.
don't share your family business. You don't
Stiff upper lip.
stiff
Mm-hmm.
upper lip, put your shoes on and get going.
Mm-hmm. That's why martinis were out at that time.
The cocktail
Yeah, cocktail hour is like everybody's like, okay, we're gonna shut up, but we're gonna have a martini to shut
hour.
it up, But you and you're talking about family history. That's what I was drawn to with your stories is, family history is something. It's one of the top hobbies in the world. People want to know who they come from, and we've done many, many, many podcasts and shows and panel discussions about it. And when you look at when someone's adopted to get their family history, that is like this whole other beast. You know what I mean? It's this whole other, like, how am I going to do this? And sometimes people don't do it because of not wanting to have that connection. It's like, I'm just going to block this off and not know. I think, again, you having the medical side of it is a good thing. It helps kind of put everything in a calmer spot,
Yeah.
like a need to know for information, just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing. But there's so many blocks for those who do deep down want to know. I think if adoption agencies should have everyone's medical records and make sure they have them. That's what, because we have that ability now,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. That at the very least, there should be an update by birth families to some kind of registry that the adoption agency can disseminate information. I mean, there's no reason we can't do that now.
Yeah.
So many people are connecting through DNA to birth families.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's, cutting out some of these difficult steps that I had to go through, there's also some danger in that because I benefited from social workers saying, I want you to think about this before you do that. You may
Mm,
get this reaction. She may deny you right away.
right.
And these are the reasons that she might do that. Are you prepared for this? So I think it is a very difficult move. It's a courageous move for people to connect through DNA without any kind of training or research or education. But I would caution people to take it slowly and think about those things.
And read your books.
Yeah.
That helps,
And I
right?
think,
It helps.
yeah,
It
I think
helps.
for me,
Mhm.
writing the first book was about educating my people, my
Mhm.
adopted world people, about this is what I was thinking. These are the obstacles I face. I hope you can learn from
Mhm.
all these experiences that I had. And then going back to write the second memoir was really, this was for my family writing this book. It was a
Oh,
reckoning of our family history, putting things in perspective. I learned a lot about my mom in reconstructing the timeline.
that's nice.
And I have more empathy for all
Mm.
of what she went through because I'm also a parent and an adult, and I can
Yeah.
see her story through her eyes also.
Yeah, we don't quite get it when we're kids, do we?
No, we're all about
Uh,
ourselves. We're about cheerleading practice and math.
yeah, I've never had kids, and my mom would say, and she still says this. I mean, we work and do all of this together, and she's like, "Well, you have to go and put the mother shoes on, and just like I take care of a lot of animals and things like that." She goes, "Okay, now how you take care about this animal? Look how your voice you got stern because if that dog crosses the street without a collar, you're so
Yeah,
there's these things where she goes, this is how it is as we parent. So you're I think women is or men and men, as a parent, you're running multiple personalities. Do you know what I mean? Because you
yeah,
have multiple tasks and it's multiple caring systems. You know what I mean? It's very interesting because then it's like, oh, you could be with your partner, you know and be a completely different person than who you are with your kids, but you're still being the same person. You
right.
just Yeah, the
And,
communication is different.
and then as you get older, you have a different relationship with your parents too. You
Hmm.
end up parenting them sometimes,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
and hoping that they don't get hurt by some of the decisions that they make.
Yeah, well, that's see, it's you're treading on all that little water stuff, that gray area that has to be done. So I think that's what's so important about memoirs is it allows people to not feel alone in what they're going through and have some insight like what you're saying. But tell us a little bit about the essays too, that collection of essays that you wrote too, because that's kind of like a in between, keeping
Right,
everyone, all right,
right.
we've got more coming,
Yeah, that the book of essays, Belonging Matters, came out a year ago, and it came from years of writing blogs and personal essays that were being published. Most of them deal with adoption, things that came out of my
Mhm.
adoption search, but also stories about family. So there's some endearing ones about being a mother and a grandmother, and my relationship with my husband, who has now since passed away. And they're just little snapshots of family history.
Mm.
One of my favorite essays, which was published in an anthology, is in that book, and it's called The Happiest Moment. And this was a question posed to me by a friend just by accident at lunch. She said, what was the happiest moment in your life? And think about that. There's a lot of them. And as she asked the question, I was thinking, okay, do I say, getting married, my birth of my first child,
Ooh.
all of those things ran through my mind. And the happiest moment, because you expect to be happy at those times, was speaking to my birth mom on the phone for the first time,
Ooh.
hearing her voice, the voice of a woman I had imagined and dreamed about for 50 some years. Talking to her on the phone was such a beautiful moment.
Mm. That's powerful. And you're doing this with your sister, right? Your identical twin. So
Uh,
I mean, she part of it. I mean, how
She was part of
was
the
she?
search, but not part of the writing.
Hmm.
She gets right of first refusal in the sense that I let her read everything, and she can, offer any
Yeah.
suggestion, criticism. She never does. This twin thing that we have, it's sort of a passenger driver relationship
Hmm.
in the sense that sometimes
Understood.
she's behind the wheel and I'm not, and then we switch gears and we're both really comfortable with that. So she's comfortable with the most of the stories. There were a few. One that I put in this book, she has no recall of this episode in our life whatsoever, because I think she blocked it out. Um,
Okay. Yeah,
it's
we
about,
do that.
yeah, it was about some male predators that we
Oh,
encountered, and she has no recall about it whatsoever. But I did.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't that we do that? We do that. Yeah, and
Protect
it's
ourselves.
yeah, it is. It's a protection to move forward, and all those things. But as with a twin, the there's a bond that is just there's. I don't even know if science has got it yet about this bond between twins, especially identical twins. I look at my grandparents. I've got uncles that are identical twins. I've got friends who are identical twins. It's like twins. Yeah, I've got a lot of friends with. There's a lot of twinning going on.
There,
But
there is.
there's this. It's almost like this unspeakable bond where you could know what's going on even if you're not in the same house.
Yes, yes.
It's
I've been
like
reading a
wow.
really interesting book about twins, and what we can learn from them. And what was fascinating to me is they studied twins that were reared together, like my twin sister and I, and then twins that grew up outside of each other with
Oh
either
wow.
another family member or separated through adoption, and then studied them retrospectively. And the ones that were reared apart from one another were more alike on most factors than the twins that were raised together, because I think when we're raised together, we're trying to be different. You know,
Yes.
one's playing tennis, the other's playing volleyball. So we're trying to be different, but the ones that are
Hmm.
raised separately were so much alike. They had kids with the same names and
Oh wow.
they were painters and fishermen and whatever. So I think it's fascinating. I think there's more to the nature piece of the nature versus nurture um, than I think people realize.
Mm, yeah, that is interesting. That's fascinating. I mean, when you say that about names being the same, in our family, oh, we got crazy family history. We're still like, do we really want to know? There's stuff we do want to know. We've got witches burned at the stake on one side. We're like, that's cool stuff. We want to find out about that. But it's not cool because it was just for talking to animals and women weren't allowed to do or speak their mind or, all of that kind of stuff. So that's not cool. But it's just, oh, that's fascinating. But my mom's dad dated my mom's mother's identical twin sister and then married my grandmother. And anyway, so there's all I can tell you is we found out later that their family turtle, and there were 6 kids. There you go. This is a generation who never told what was going on.
Oh,
The turtle was named after his wife before that, whose house they were living in.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. And that he had another
Complicated.
wife at the same time. And so she has a bunch of siblings all over, and they all have the same names. There's Nancy's, there's Ricky's, oh yeah, as best as he could. So had 3 different families at the same time.
That's
No,
wild.
it's not Mormon, just
No,
to put that
well,
at, at
that
ease for everyone.
sounds like a good book to read or write.
But that's what I was saying, that quiet time, that quiet, not quiet time, but it was a time of hush hush.
Yeah,
And the kids don't know, but we find like multiple birth certificates, multiple marriage certificates in different countries, even one's in Mexico, one's not. I mean, it's weird. And so to go through all of that, that's why I think family history, people are really into it. And then they start going, I don't know, and then being adopted, and we still don't know if one sister is really related or not biologically.
yes. One of the things I found out in doing my family history was my birth father was 1/2 Chippewa Indian.
Oh, wow.
So a whole different culture that I was never exposed to, and nobody talked about it until I met my brother. And while I don't present as Native American, I'm very curious about it. I feel like it is a culture that maybe I would like to reclaim a bit.
Yeah.
And it's that identity piece that we're always discovering something about our families and ourselves. I always wondered why I wanted to learn how to shoot a gun. I can see things move in the distance quicker than anybody else. And I think that that's some of that Native American heritage that, we carry through our line, but we don't really know about it until we know what our family history is.
See, ours, we're supposed to have that as well, Paiute. And I have a book of Paiute history, and there's a Paiute warrior, and I look identical to this male warrior. I mean, splitting image. Like, I'm like, whoa, that's creepy. Like, not creepy, but freaky. And
Yeah.
our family denies it. Boom. So we're supposed to do our DNA and all that, but they know we didn't do that. But my nana told people what was really going on, because again, that hush hush thing, isn't that
Right.
wild? But
Yeah.
then,
I
yeah,
think
I
that
mean,
the era in which we were growing up, Lisa, being Native American was not cool. Like you didn't want to claim that. Whereas now I think it's okay to be anything that you are, and it's
yeah.
okay to reclaim that and be curious about it.
Well, also being a family, a blended family, here you've got biological and adoptive children in one family. Was that a norm then? I mean, now there's, I think it's very blended now with families.
Right. And I think, the difficulty that my mom and dad faced with a lot of infertility issues, they didn't have any recourse besides adoption to build their.
Okay.
And when you look at what's available today in family building, you could have IVF, You could have a surrogate, you can use adoption. It doesn't matter if you're a same-sex household or not. It's in any of
Mhm,
those avenues. I think family building has so many more choices now. And I wouldn't say that infertility has gone away. Anything but. I think it still is an issue
mhm,
that couples today face,
mm,
regardless of whether they're heterosexual or same sex or whatever.
mm. So your mom, how did she feel about the book? Both,
Um,
all three of them.
she's a very classy lady, and she did get to read it. She got to collaborate with me on the book. So I feel like she has ownership of it. It's very honest, which is what she says.
That's good.
In being honest in a memoir, you run the risk of alienating the reader that, oh gosh, she's being so hard on her mom. But I feel like there is a trajectory in our relationship. Like we got through it. I came to respect how she parented, even though it's not how I want to parent or I did parent.
Mhm,
I think my mom comes out well in the book for all the things that she did right. She gave a lot of really great advice and modeling. I think the role model that she
mm,
was as a person, very loving and God-fearing, even though she had this tendency to take a good slap now and then. She was a good mother. She was a good
mm,
parent, and she suffered in trying to achieve her goals. And I hope that the book portrays that,
mm,
how I feel about her in that respect.
mm. So for readers, um, I'm going to say that this goes beyond those who are on their adoptive journey of, digging up family history and learning. This goes beyond, and this is a good way for people to have an understanding. Because
Yes.
I think people are, even in this day and age, even though we have all of these blended families, all these different opportunities and ways to do things, I still think there's a, do we talk to someone about this or not? You know what I mean? It's still a little hush hush in a way.
Yeah, and this really is, well, it's an adoption story and a story about sisters. It's also a coming of age memoir.
Mm,
So it's going through childhood, adolescence, and early adulthood with the same characters that are familiar from the first book.
mm,
So I hope that it
yeah.
appeases the readers and listeners' curiosity.
Yeah, I think memoirs are so good in getting people to see things in a different way, or be, wear someone else's shoes with more of an open mind, because you'll find yourself in there. We always find ourselves in a character, whether the character is real or fictitious. We do. We'll find
Right.
something to connect with, even if it's a villain. Just saying.
And there's always villains. I mean,
There's always,
there's always interesting characters in books, which actually make it more enjoyable to read.
yeah. Now I heard through a little birdie that you're doing a whole trilogy. So this is like, there's a
Yeah,
book of essays which is kind of connected but not, separate from this. So, you know
yeah,
twice the what is coming next.
yeah, twice the what. It definitely, life, life hands you so much material if you look at it from that perspective.
Mm,
My husband was the instigator in me researching my family history. I also, and the second book, Twice the Family, with him as a major character. He passed away 2 years ago, almost
oh, sorry.
three, of cancer. And
Oh,
so I'm on this next set of searching for identity, belonging, family, reinventing myself. And so the next piece of this, the third act, if you will be this unveiling of stories about him, but also what it's like to be a younger widow and managing
mm.
those roles of being not a wife anymore, but still being a mother, still being a sister, still being a friend. So we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, I think community, whether
Mm.
it's family or friends, just people you don't know, sometimes the people you don't know are the biggest helps, you
Oh,
know
you nailed it. That is
you know
so true. And the people you expect so much from, like, where are they? Where'd they
yeah.
go?
Yeah,
Right?
that's where they say don't have expectations, but come on, y'all, I'm human.
Yeah,
I
so
have expectations. Don't,
yeah,
no judgment, no expectations. Yeah, right. I'm trying.
right, right. And I think I have a friend who's also an adoptee and she lost two husbands. And she said,
Oh,
in an
wow.
odd way, adoption sort of prepares you for dealing with some of these tough things because
Hmm.
adoption happened to us. It wasn't a
Mm,
choice we made. And becoming a widow is something that happens to people. You don't choose it, it's not what you want. It's not easily navigable. But I think because we accept our situation maybe a little quicker than folks that didn't have to go through this whole adoption thing, we are used to figuring out where we belong or where we might
mhm.
want to belong, what we feel our identity is all about. And well, I don't say that it, is the recommended path to this. I do think some of the things that I went through as an adoptee have been useful tools. Certainly
Mm,
the grieving tools that I experienced as a kid when my sister died were things that came back. For example, um, with my own children, I was very, very conscious of not emotionally detaching from them. I knew
mm.
that some of their needs needed to be put in front of my own because I didn't want them to experience what I felt when my mom went through this depression. So I learned things from the death of my sister that has been helpful in this go round.
It's really important what you just said about that detachment because that's where the break happens. Women who have lost a child in labor, things like that, or had a miscarriage, the husband and wife try to get together, same partners too. And there's a split that comes because of the grief, because you tend to curl up, which means you're curling
Not
up
listening
alone.
to one another, right?
Yeah. Um, so it can happen. It can happen. Doesn't always, but it can. That close off is you and almost I think there's also an innate fear of the pain you're going through is going to transfer onto someone else. So there's
Mhm.
also kind of a protective with that, almost like it's contagious, right?
Right,
Yet
right,
everyone's going through it too. So the grief part, I feel the same for, nowadays, divorce is just kind of part of life. But if you think back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that was still a big deal, getting a divorce. And the kids, they're like, in school, if you were, a child, from a divorced family, that used to get picked on for that. It's like
mhm,
somebody did a scandal to have a divorce. Something
yeah,
happened in that family for that. And what was the scandal? You know, that was kind of that feeling. And the kids rarely got supported other than, oh, we're going to buy the kids a whole bunch of stuff over here. The parenting side gets wonky, back in the day, right? Got wonky. One is trying really hard to maybe survive. The other one's going, here's your, the toy you wanted, where the other one's going, I'm really battling to put food on the table and doing all I can. And the kid half of the times thinks it's their fault. So it's
right,
such a weird, I feel like it kind of fits in with your story of that, where the divorced family child has to
right.
sit and find themselves out,
Yeah, I
and
think
not
you're
blame themselves for their parents.
it does come to sort of down to choice too. Often a child in a divorced family has to choose which parent that they are going to live with. And
Mhm.
wow, what a
That's
tough choice
that's
to
mean.
make.
That's
Yeah,
mean.
tough choice to make. And I felt a little bit like that when I was looking for my birth parents. While my mom didn't say it, there was a line there that she didn't cross. But I felt like, oh, is she going to ask me to choose the birth parents or them and not have any
Yeah.
contact? She didn't, but sometimes that does happen with adoptees where the
Mm.
adoptive parent makes them gives them an ultimatum to make,
Mhm.
which is really, really sad and very, very hard on the adoptee.
Wow. Wow. Complex.
Yes,
Yeah. You just breathe through it. You have to keep breathing
you
one foot
do.
at a time. Yeah.
Right. And I think, I'm so grateful for being able to talk about this with you because I think the more people listen to complicated conversations about adoption and
Hmm.
families, the better aware we are when that situation happens in our own family. We
Mhm.
have some tools to which to settle in and use to grapple with the situation.
Yeah, I agree. And the pulling away, you sometimes you have to make time for yourself to breathe and I think sometimes families have that you don't have to all be together all the time. You need to have individual moments, right?
Right.
But you have to come back to that right where we started at the beginning of this conversation. There has to be that family supper. You know?
Yeah, there does. There does. When I met my aunt, my birth mom's sister, she's an
Oh yeah.
adopted parent. She had one child,
Wow.
an adopted child. And when she met us, she said, you know, wow, I now understand what the birth parent of my child must feel like, because now I have a sister who can share with me what it must have been like and how hard it must have been to place this child for adoption. And she said, you know, I
Wow.
think of my child as my child, and he is, but I also share him with somebody else, even though she's not present in his life. It was really a profound moment, the four of us, my sister and I, and my aunt, my birth mom, talking about this. And I think it
Mm.
was eye-opening to her to realize this is going on in my own family, and I didn't even know it.
Mm. I have a second cousin who's adopted, and it was very difficult for, in fact, the family, uh, the husband and wife split, and this became, and she was in his therapist, and he's a, you know, easy photographer guy, surfer, you know, very, very nice couple, really, really sweet. And it was a hard road for them. They adopted my cousin, second cousin, when she was a baby. And her mom was a drug addict. And the drugs were basically in her body as a child. And so that she went through this, like yeah, this detox and so there's a lot of therapy needed. And luckily, you know, and is in this, you know, about 20-30 years ago. And then the mom was allowed to visit. And it just caused so much pain and drama for the daughter. And because one time she was sober, one time she wasn't. Can you trust her? No, you can't. So there was these highs and lows and highs and lows, and they sat through it all, which became very difficult, I think, for them. Their
Yes.
life was that. And I remember, you know, Christmas parties and things like that where we just waited for the drama to go and go, you know, why don't we just not go? And then it was like, no, we need you to come, you know, because, oh,
Yeah.
so and so showed up out of the blue. And
Change.
well, she ended up going on her own sabbatical, on a spiritual sabbatical to India, and came back and does healing work through Reiki, massage, meditation, the whole thing, and is flourishing like you wouldn't believe.
Wow.
So she went and just, she had to find herself away from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
She had to just go, you know what? Time for me time. She's still connected to everyone, and everyone's, it just was, you know, that was it for parents, but which everybody thought they were the couple, this would never happen, but it happened. And she's just doing like it was beautiful to see, you know. And so everyone can still support each other and everything and get to, it's okay, you know. So she learned forgiveness and understanding of where her biological mother, like, it's not her fault, and her mother has a problem, and you don't need to carry that with you. That
That's
was
not,
the lesson.
yeah, it's not your problem too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so that was a very powerful family thing for us to go and experience that, you know. But not, you know, I'm not in it, you know, but just to see her be able to not give up on herself, because
And
so many times she wanted to, you know.
I'm willing to bet a lot of families have those stories that they keep within their
Tons.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets shh, don't talk about these things, but you know, I think it's important to show that the possibilities, to keep going to and help people on a journey, because she almost didn't make it so many times through her teenage life. Was hell, was absolute hell. And going in the wrong groups of people, going her mother's way, then going completely the opposite, that kind of thing was very traumatic for everybody. It was, a very rough time, but don't give up on people.
No, and it's so heartwarming to hear stories like that, that all it was a trip to India, figuring out a different path that was the path towards wholeness, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, how wonderful that it had the outcome that it did. And hopefully
Yeah.
people listening to that story find some hope for whatever hardship they're going through as a family.
Yeah. It's interesting because adoption, and when you go through find the family, the DNA and everything, it's like you want to hear all these things. You want to know more about yourself. Then you learn, I want to know more about myself through myself. It's like the two have to meet. The two have to meet. It has been a wonderful time having you on the show. Thank you for writing and doing what you do. It's an advocate, so everyone, the book is out tomorrow. So that is February 4th. It is out. So you can go get it. Go to Julie McGue author.com, and that's MCGUE. So go check that out on her website, and you can pre-order it, and just go get it and read it. Read all three of them, right? That's what we want. Everyone could start at the first one and then go to the next one. Doesn't matter.
Particular order. It'll all work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.